Hey guys, I hope everybody is having an amazing day. I wanted to have a real conversation about my views about my journey on motherhood and just basically really get into my struggle that I've been having. Right now I am in my early 30s and I do have a plan in place should I decide to have children. But I definitely felt like I would have a couple by now, be more settled. But life just didn't turn out that way for me. That's okay. I try not to think too heavy into it. But here's my struggle. I have days where I feel like, regardless of what happens in my life, I want to be a mom because I feel like that is such a fulfilling job. But then I have other days where the idea of being responsible for another human life intimidates me. Right now, the world is so difficult to navigate through as a single person. Inflation is really kicking our ass. The housing market, the rental market is really terrible. People are so deceptive and so mean and so evil. And it's scary to bring a child into that. And so I feel like I don't know if I will have the capacity to protect my child the way I would want to. And that scares me. Another thing that scares me is being vulnerable for 9 months as a pregnant woman. Just navigating through the world with people who have no regard for others. And I'm just so vulnerable that it'll be easy for me to be selected as a target. And then, of course, the mortality rate, especially amongst Black women, is higher than any other type of woman out there. And then labor pains. My tolerance to pain isn't as bad as it was when I was a child, but it's still not great. And the descriptions that I've heard as it pertains to childbirth is not welcoming. Like, it doesn't make me want to even experience it. I get at the end of the day, it's all worth it because you're bringing a life into this world. It could be very beautiful, but it's kind of hard to see the beauty when you're talking about like feeling like somebody is punching you in the back and ripping out your underloins and all these graphic descriptions that I've heard. It's so hard to even imagine what the beauty can possibly be other than when you hear your baby cry and you know that they're here, they're healthy, everything is okay. I can start to see the beauty then, but just leading up to it, the body is so amazing with how how they work when you are pregnant. The fact that your baby gets nutrients based on what you eat and the fact that they're growing and all of that is really, really amazing. But then there's a vulnerability there because you're pregnant, you're carrying a baby. And, maybe you might not be as sharp. Maybe you might be into something else. You can't be as swift because you're pregnant. Sometimes when you're in a crowded mall, you kind of move a certain way. When you're pregnant, maybe you can't move the same, energy, you're tired, whatever. So just being physically vulnerable in public for 9 months is a scary thought for me. Traveling in the winter, the potential of falling. There's just so much things that scare me about pregnancy, childbirth. The whole process is scary. I don't know if there's a point where it stops being scary. And I've had conversations with friends. A lot of my friends have children, and I speak to some of them and I basically voice my concerns. And a lot of times it's like, you're never ready. But when it happens, you will figure it out. You may make some mistakes on the way. Don't beat yourself up, but it's worth it, right? And then you have postpartum depression. I don't believe that postpartum depression is spoken about enough. I know nowadays people are a lot more open with their experiences with it, but I still don't believe that it is spoken about enough to where we have the right amount of information to say, if this happens to us, we are somewhat prepared. Not because the resources aren't out there, but also because there are so many types. And it's kind of hard to cover every single type. So when I say, it's not being spoken about enough, it's not even so much the fact of, hey, this is what I experienced, this is what I did. It's more so, this is what I experienced in depth. These were my symptoms. This is how I felt. This is how long it lasted. And sometimes it's just, and then I got over it and, things are good now. But what did you do? Did you backslide? What did that look like? How did you feel in that moment? I noticed that a lot of times the conversations are real and graphic, and I could appreciate those graphic conversations even though they're a little uncomfortable, because they're realistic. They give us an idea, a glimpse of what we're ready to experience. But at the same token, I feel like there's certain parts that are left out. I feel like there are still things that I read about. I'm like, what the heck? This too? And it's so scary to me. I know it's worth it at the end, but I just cannot shake the fact that it's scary. And then having the child, and then knowing that you're responsible for how this child turns out for the most part, raising that child up. Then we want to make sure that we are good mentally, that we have the mental intelligence, that we have the emotional intelligence, that we have the physical intelligence, the psychological intelligence. No, we may not know everything, but I feel like there's a base level of intelligence that we need to have to successfully raise these children up. Because as we know, and we've seen children who come from beautiful homes, loving homes, and then they go out on the street, meet a couple new friends or so, and all of that almost seems to get undone. Then people will blame the family. That is scary to me. Knowing that you raise your child up, raise them in love, teach them right from wrong, explain to them what the consequences are. And sometimes that doesn't even matter, because they can walk out the door and be a completely different person than when they come back in, then they're the loving child. So much times you see cases, stories where things are happening with people's children and they don't know. Sending your kids to school, now you're afraid that something's going to happen at the school. Are they going to come back home from school? Like, these are fears that I don't know if I'm ready to experience as a parent. And that's a part of my struggle. Yeah, I'm afraid of pregnancy, the vulnerability, labor, all of those things. But it's really the fact that I know that I will not be able to protect my child 24/7, and I would want to. At some point, I know I would have to let go and let my child breathe and grow and make mistakes and learn from them and all of those things, just as I had to do. But I feel like the world that I was raised in and this world that we're currently living in are two different worlds, and this current world isn't forgiving. And that scares me. And that's why I continuously have this struggle with, do I really want to bring a child into this space? And if I do, am I ready to commit to this child as it pertains to raising them up and developing skills for them? And am I ready to commit to show the emotional intelligence? Am I ready to commit to show the mental intelligence, the psychological intelligence? A lot of these times, if you really think about certain things that people went through in their childhood and you take it back and you peel back those layers, a lot of times those kids are getting hit by the traumas of their elders. It's not even about the child. Do I have the capacity? Am I ready? Do I have the patience? I need to have the patience. I do not want to bring a child into a situation and I'm not ready, because I do not want my child to suffer. And those are the things that is difficult. I constantly work on myself because I want to make sure that if I decide to have a child, that I have the capacity to raise my child in a healthy manner. I do not want my child to be brought up on traumas. I do not want my child to be brought up on survival. And I do not want my child to be brought up in an environment where they don't feel safe. No, thank you. But do I have the tools? Am I ready? Will I ever be ready? I don't know. Maybe not. But just not knowing is fucking scary. And that is why I have such a hard time going back and forth with the idea, because I know that being a mother is rewarding. 100%. I see it on my friends' faces. It's beautiful. Their children are beautiful. Watching them grow is beautiful. But it's so much more than just, oh my gosh, you're so adorable. Oh my gosh, let me put you in cute clothes. It's so much more than that. This is a person that's going to be integrated into society, and it's up to you how they come out. At least in the beginning. Their manners, their street smarts. That's up to us. Their education. It's not only school. They have to come home and get that continued education. There's a commitment there. And am I ready for that commitment? Maybe I might never be, but I don't want to bring up my child in some bullshit because I'm not. Because my child didn't ask to be here. So now I have to buckle up my bootstraps and figure it out. But I do not want my child to suffer in that process of me figuring it out. That's my fear. And that's just me being real and honest. And I would really, really love to hear from some women who, maybe didn't want to have kids, but end up having kids, wanted kids, but don't have kids, or don't want kids and don't have them, or wanted kids and had them. I would really love to hear from everybody, because I can't imagine that I'm the only woman that feels like this. Reasons might be different, but I would really love to have some insight and some feedback, because, at the end of the day, this is a one-person perspective, and that's mine. And it's really good when we hear from other people to give us different perspectives, to make us hear things differently, to make us look at things differently. So please leave your comments, leave your feedback, and let's have this discussion, because I think that if we open up the floor for more discussions, it would make for a lot of easier decisions. I want everybody to enjoy their day, and cheers to a new episode.